Your thoughts are incredibly powerful, and everybody knows it but you. Your thoughts are so powerful that companies are spending trillions of dollars so that they can influence the way that you think. Because they know once they influence the way that you think, they influence the way that you act. And they influence whether or not you are going to buy their products. Your thoughts are so powerful that politicians try to influence your thought so that way they can influence the way that you vote. Have you ever noticed that companies and politicians tend to repeat the same things over and over, sound bites that kind of get stuck in your head? Musicians do this. There was a song that I was listening to recently that just got stuck in my head. I wouldn't even say I'm a fan of the artist or a fan of the song, but the lyrics and the beat just kept playing over and over and over. I often see politicians are really great at these little sound bites, these little two-word phrases that kind of stick, especially to paint their opponents in a negative light. Politicians and business people are really good at this. And we've had one recent politician who has been both. And whether you like him or not, there are people who say is a great communicator because he knows how to use these sound bites. He's a former president, Donald Trump. And I remember when he was campaigning, he would have these sound bites for his opponent. Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary, things that stick in our brains. And then our brains start to look to prove that right. So anytime we see President Joe Biden a little sleepy, oh, there goes Sleepy Joe. Whenever there was an investigation on Hillary Clinton, there goes Crooked Hillary. Words are incredibly powerful. Words are the verbal embodiment of power. You don't believe me? Well, I'm going to turn to some of our major religions to show you. If you look at the Bible, you don't have to go very far. In the book of Genesis, when it starts talking about the creation of the world, it starts by saying, and God said there was light, and there was light. And God said there was, and things came into existence. When you look at the Torah, it talks about the 10 utterances of creation. And then when you look at the Quran, they say that words are so powerful that it is better to pay somebody a compliment than to do a good deed. Words are the verbal embodiment of power. And aren't the thoughts that we have in our heads just the words that are kind of floating through? We have anywhere from 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. Now, I don't know how anybody calculated how many thoughts that we have, but that's sort of the guesstimate. What's really interesting about that is that out of the 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day that we have, 90 to 95% of them are the same exact thoughts we had yesterday. And we wonder why people can't change their lives. And then, out of those 12 to 60,000 thoughts we have per day, 60 to 70% of those thoughts are negative. They're defeatist at best. They are holding us back. And then we wonder why it is that people are living the kind of lives that they're just not happy with. When we look at our society, there's a lot of negativity. A lot of negativity in the way people talk, in the messages that get put out there. Sometimes we'll have people who are friends and colleagues, people who are close to us, that may say something that's a little bit negative. And we know how that impacts us. There are negative messages all around us in our world that feeds into our brains, feeds into this 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts we have per day. And we need to combat that. Why is it that we need to combat that? Because when you are focused on a thought and replay it over and over again, you are essentially telling your brain that that thought is important to you. There is a group of neurons in your brain called the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system is located towards the back and base of your brain. From an evolutionary perspective, it is the oldest part of our brain. It is the part that is responsible for our vital functions like our heart rate and respiratory rate. It's also the part that is responsible for our consciousness, our sleep-wake cycles, but also our level of awareness. So when you take a message, whether it's coming from you or coming from the outside world, and focus on it, and now tell your reticular activating system that this is important, it's going to take that message and send it to the rest of your brain. And well, what does that do? Well, that tells your brain to look out for things that are related to this. Let me give you some examples. Your name is important to you, so you are aware of your name. You can be in a crowded, loud space. Somebody says your name 20 feet away, may not even be talking to you, and you'll turn. Because your name is important, and so your brain picks up on that. For any of the parents in the audiences, when you've got a brand new baby and you finally are able to get them down to sleep, and maybe now you can finally take your turn to get some sleep, and all of a sudden you hear that baby make a sound, you will rise out of deep sleep because that baby is important. Your brain knows it's important, so it's going to make you aware of everything so that way you can get up and tend to that baby, even if the baby's still sleeping and just made a sound. I'll give you a more personal example. A few years back, I was walking by this Lexus dealership. I was car shopping, but I wasn't planning on getting anything that day. And as I'm walking by, I saw this beautiful car. It was December. They had their December sales events. They had these like snowflakes sort of glistening in the window. They had all their cars wrapped. I saw this beautiful car, IS 300 F Sport. And I fell in love with that car right then. I walked in. It was probably the easiest sale this guy was ever going to have to make. Got the car. I start driving that car off the lot, start driving it on the highway towards my home. I must have seen that car 5 different times. I had never seen that car before, but now I saw it 5 different times in the color I had and in different colors. It wasn't that people went out and got the car the same time I did. The car had always been there. But the fact that I had gotten that car and it meant so much for me, so much to me, meant that I was telling my brain that this is important. I was telling my reticular activating system, pay attention. Pay attention to anything that has to do with this car. So now I ask you, what messages, what thoughts are you telling your brain that are important to you? Are you telling your brain that I'm broke, that I'm stupid, that I'm fat? Because it's going to look for every way to prove that point right. Your brain is a predictability machine. It wants to prove you right because that's how it protects you. I've known people who are beautiful and thin, and they're like, oh, look at all this fat. Look at this fat. Look, I've got cellulite here and there. And you're looking at them like, no, you don't. But they have convinced themselves that they do. So any imperfection that they may see, any quote unquote imperfection, the brain is now using to prove them right. Are you telling yourself negative messages? Or are you telling yourself more positive messages? Like, I am beautiful. I am worthy. I am smart. I am rich. I can accomplish whatever I want. I am a good person. Because if you do that, your brain will also look to prove you right and point out the things that make those statements true. How is it that you want to live your life? With the negative messages that you're telling yourself? Or is it the negative messages that society is telling you? Or would you much rather live a much more positive and powerful life? Because that is well within your control. Bruce Lee once said, never say anything negative about yourself, even if you're joking. Your brain does not know the difference. Never say anything negative about yourself, even if you are joking. I know so many people who make jokes against themselves. And it's a window into what they really think and feel about who they are. You always want to be positive about who you are. You always want to look at what makes you special, at your gifts. You always want to combat what society is trying to tell you, especially all the negativity that's out there. I am someone who believes in positive affirmations. In fact, I am constantly using positive affirmations. I am so into positive affirmations. Not only do I tell myself positive affirmations, I have recorded my own voice, 9 minutes and 10 seconds of me saying positive affirmations, so I can listen to when I'm driving. Sometimes I listen to as I'm falling asleep. Because I want those positive affirmations, not only to get to my reticular activating system so it can prove me right and point out opportunities, but I also want it to seep into my subconscious mind. The reality is that our subconscious mind governs 95% of our behavior. Our conscious mind, that's the things that we think about. I am consciously thinking that what the date and the month are. I am consciously thinking about that person's name. I am consciously thinking about what it is that I need to do. But our subconscious minds are things we're not even aware of. They're things that our brain has taken in. Some of the things that our brains have been fed by others, or fed by the news, or fed by TV, or fed by social media, or fed by the music that we listen to. There are things that impact us when we're not even paying attention. Things that impact us when we're almost in a drowsy, hypnotic state or in a sleep state. That's what governs most of our behavior. And you know who knows this? Businesses know this. Politicians know this. A lot of people know this, except for you. Our subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. And we have the ability to feed it the messages that we want. I am very mindful of the messages that I feed my brain. I am very mindful of what I watch. I do not watch the news. I am very mindful of what I take in on social media. I am very mindful of who I am around. And if I don't like what they are saying, I distance myself. I'm very mindful about what I read. I'm very mindful about the conferences and seminars that I go to and the podcasts that I listen to. Because I know that a lot of that information will seep into my subconscious mind, and therefore it'll govern the way that I think and the way that I act. Some of the affirmations that I tell myself. So every morning I've got this routine. I get up, I will meditate, I will pray. Sometimes I'll listen to something to get specific sounds and vibrations or affirmations into my head. After I do my wash up routine, I will look in the mirror and there are things that I say. I am happy. I am healthy. I am amazing. I am successful. I am impactful. I am worthy. I am loved. I am loved. I love me. God loves me. Jesus loves me. There are things that I say throughout the day to combat what society is saying. And sometimes it's to combat what my kids are saying. So I'll give you an example. When I was on dialysis and had this catheter implanted into my chest as the access site for dialysis, and I wanted to make sure that I was keeping physically healthy. One of the things that I was doing almost every day was playing basketball with my kids. And we would play, my kids are young. Right now they're 12 and 10. So this is a couple of years ago. And when we play, and still to this day, it's always them two against me. And so I'm playing them 2-on-1, and I'm beating them, talking a little trash to my kids. And my youngest son, says something to the effect about me being sick, me having this catheter implanted. And I looked at him and I said, sick? I'm not sick. I'm healthy. I'm busting your butts right now in basketball 2-on-1. A lot of people that I see with a diagnosis live up to that diagnosis. It consumes their thinking and then consumes their behavior. I'll give you an example of a patient I had. We had this patient seizure-free for over a year, just seeing me for a 6-month follow-up. So I said to him, how have you been? He's like, oh, I've been great. Any seizures? Nope. He was on some medication. Any side effects? No. How's your lifestyle? Are you exercising, eating right? Yep, I'm doing all that. Oh, that's great. Are you working? How are you spending your days? He's like, oh no, I don't work. No, I stay home and do nothing all day. Why do you stay home and do nothing all day? And he was like, because I have epilepsy. And I was like, yep, you haven't had a seizure in over a year. And he's like, yeah, but I have epilepsy. So I was like, are you just waiting for the next one to happen? Because you may be completely seizure-free at this point. You can live your life. But some people buy in so much into the labels that we give them in life. And getting a diagnosis is a label. And society gives out labels all the time. Some people buy into these labels so much that they start to think like whatever they think that label should think like. And even worse, they start to act in ways that they associate that label acting like. Even though I've known plenty of people with epilepsy who have seizures and are running successful businesses, or CEOs, have founded businesses, are doctors, lawyers, judges. But he bought into this idea of who he was supposed to be because of a label that he had received. His thoughts were sort of overtaken by his diagnosis. And whatever he read about his diagnosis, and whatever people told him about his diagnosis, not allowing him to be the person who he truly was inside, which was this incredible, powerful, amazing, sweet, good man. Taking charge of our thoughts, that allows us to create the life that we want for ourselves. And using positive affirmations allows us to take charge of our thoughts. It allows us to get through the challenging times. It allows us to think better of ourselves and society in general. It allows us to see the opportunities that lie in front of us. Our thoughts are incredibly powerful. And for me, using positive affirmations is a way for me to combat what society's messages sometimes are. Sometimes the messages that are coming from some of the outlets that I use. Sometimes maybe even coming from my own head. Positive affirmations are a really powerful tool, and I encourage you to use them. This is Dr. Philippe Douyon, and you've been watching another episode of the Surviving Your Brain podcast. I can't wait to see you again.